Welcome to the Munro Review, where it's all about connecting, sharing, and valuing the arts in the Central San Joaquin Valley. I'm Donald Munro. Today is March 3rd, and I am so excited to be here in the CMAC studio with a wonderful lineup of guests. Today, we're going to start off talking with Los Angeles Times reporter and Tower District denizen Diana Marcum about her latest book, The Fallen Stones. Janice Noga and Oscar Speace are here to celebrate the new movie version of the one-woman play Yanka. And we almost got to see them in the SpongeBob musical until Selma Arts Center had to postpone its production due to COVID. We'll check in with two of the stars to find out what that was like. But first, let's take a look at what I've been covering on MunroReview.com. One of my favorite stories last month put the spotlight on a well-known local actor who is going on to great things. Will Bishop is an alum of Selma Arts Center, Good Company Players, Fresno State, Stageworks Fresno, the list goes on. Most recently, he landed a role in the ensemble of the national tour of Anastasia, which made a two-night stop at the Soroyan Theater. Now, that would have been a great story and review in itself, but on opening night, Will got the call. He went on as an understudy in the role of Gleb, the villain of the piece. Imagine the delight of the Will Bishop fans in the audience, and there were many, when he strode onto that stage in that leading role. He made quite an impression, standing stern and posture perfect, his hair slicked back and his curls banished to a Soviet gulag. And he sounded wonderful as well, his booming baritone commanding the Soroyan all the way to the balcony. My favorite part was when he took his bows standing on the same stage that he'd watched as a little kid. That's the kind of hometown story I love. Also on the site, I wrote reviews of Shine Theater's In the Next Room, or The Vibrator play, which wins the award for Provocative Title of the Year, plus Good Company's Guys and Dolls and Months on End. I wrote a post about the remarkable feat of pianist Jeremy Denk playing Bach's entire Book 1 of the Well-Tempered Clavier from memory, and with amazing creativity. And I told you about the Fresno Art Museum's new round of exhibitions, including a crowd pleaser of Andy Warhol silkscreen prints. Now, let's get to my first guest. Diana Marcum is many things: a Pulitzer Prize winner, an intrepid journalist, a lover of linen sheets, and someone who really, really doesn't like snakes. Yet, she spent a whole bunch of time in Belize in a rainforest writing a fascinating book about butterflies and more. And she's here to tell us about it. Welcome, Diana.
Hey, Donald.
So, I have to tell you a story that my very first pet was a caterpillar. And I loved that thing. And then he died. So he didn't turn into a butterfly, but you got to experience the whole life cycle. So tell us, what is this preserve? What is this place that you write about?
Oh, the Fallen Stones. Well, I lived on a butterfly farm. It's on top of a hill in the Maya Mountains, and they breed a bunch of different butterflies, but mostly the blue morpho, which is a huge butterfly that's iridescent and blue and turquoise and purple, kind of changes colors, and it's just an amazing thing. They're so bright that bush pilots have actually seen them from the air.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah.
So you wrote a book about the Azores, mm-hmm. and then you went on a fellowship to Harvard, and you write a little bit about that. Trace that path for us, and how did you end up going from Harvard and your job at the LA Times to Belize?
Well, it turns out that I'm not really Harvard material. I found the East Coast a little bit stuffy, and my boyfriend and I got a little cranky with each other during this time period, and we decided what we needed to do was go to Belize, somewhere warm on vacation. And we got there and had a big fight and ended up at this little resort out in the middle of nowhere, a little eco lodge that was tied to this butterfly farm, because the people who managed the butterfly farm also, or the motel also did the butterfly farm. So even though it was closed to the public, they could take their guests there. So they took us up there, and I mean, it's just, I think we have those moments we always remember, like you and your pet. I just remember getting out of the Jeep, and I was on the top of this mountain, and you know, there was Guatemala to one side and the Caribbean Sea to the other, and jungle, like true deep jungle all below me. And it was amazing. I think at that very moment I started thinking, could this be a book? I mean, before I even got to the farm, but I thought I was being silly.
One of the things I really love about your book is how you put us in the jungle and you make us feel the things that you felt. And
I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I itched. I could hear those monkeys. Really, really felt immersed. Mm-hmm. And you've said yourself, and you talk about in the book, how you do not like snakes. You do not like mosquitoes. How did you do it?
I think a lot of times there's just a price to pay for what you really want. I got to see clouds of butterflies. I met people that I would have never met that I still consider close friends. Like on any day, I'm getting texts from people who are working on a butterfly on top of the Maya Mountains. But yeah, the mosquitoes were horrible. I seem to be particularly sensitive to them, and I talk about it in the book. I'm not exactly the Indiana Jones type, but here I was like pulling on my rubber boots so that the snakes wouldn't bite me, and putting on my little mosquito-proof scarf and my hat. And I mean, every once in a while I'd see myself in the mirror. I mean, it wasn't much of a mirror, a little square like that, and just be like, who are you?
But the kind of joke I made about linen sheets is that you did manage to get a pair of linen sheets down there. So that
I firmly believe that anything can be made better with the right textiles. As you know, you've known me a long time.
Exactly. One of the things I learned from your book is that butterflies are a way that you can help the conservation process.
Right.
And can you tell us about that? I had never realized that.
Well, kind of on a couple of different levels. Places like this butterfly farm, they're a way to provide jobs for people who live in the rainforest that aren't damaging the rainforest. It's not logging, it's not a shrimp farm, it's not something that's hurting the environment. It's a way to pay to keep the rainforest open. This is preserving a huge swath of jungle, because you need all those plants and those leaves to feed the butterflies that are in captivity. So the butterflies that they're raising and sending all around the world are protecting rainforests for wild butterflies and other wild things. But also, like this particular butterfly farm is very close to a Maya village, and it's helping to support that village and those families. But then, on a more personal level, butterflies are the great pollinators, and I would argue they're also kind of important to us as human beings to just kind of keep a little bit of hope and connection that we can make things better, and it's something that anybody can do. I mean, you can plant even some herbs on your balcony and let them go to flower, and that's going to, give the butterflies more things to eat. I guess eat's the wrong word, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways the butterflies help the environment, but I think mostly, in my opinion, it's by inspiring us to care.
It was really an immersion in nature for you, I guess, in a way that we just don't usually experience.
It was an immersion in a different kind of nature. I mean, I had the good fortune to live in the Azores, and I live here. So I spent a lot of time in the Sierra, but this was just a different kind of wilderness, and it was interesting seeing, like, the people that grew up there were so comfortable in that, even though it's this environment where they, like, train for guerrilla warfare, and where, you know, other cultures think of it as like the most dangerous place on earth. And it was just so unfamiliar. It was so different in every way to me.
What do you hope people take from this book? Or do you hope they take anything other than it's just a kind of a sweet, gentle story?
You know, I think when I'm writing the book, I was sort of writing it for me because, I mean, I don't want to give away what happens in the book, but I think most people will probably be able to guess because it starts in 2019. So all of my plans as a travel writer to go here and go there, they got upended by the pandemic. And I had come home to Fresno just for a little break. And I got stuck in Fresno, and I needed to figure out how to write this book, this travel book, when I couldn't travel. And so, you know, I was sitting here, and I think I was trying to find a way forward. Like, I was just trying to make myself feel better, and it made me feel good to go back. You know, even though it was just like 7 months back, it felt like a whole different lifetime back. Kind of recreate it and relive it, and sort of, as I got a little closer, try to figure out like where the book was going to go, because where the book was going to go was where I was going to go, and I didn't know. So I kind of hope that the hope I was trying to create for myself maybe got passed on.
Well, and that's something very special that you do so well, is you write this kind of form of a memoir / travel book. It's about you, and it's about the place, and it's very nice how you're able to interconnect those two things.
Thank you. I mean, I'm not sure what kind of books I write. People always ask, and it's like, memoir, travel, journalism, science.
Right. But I can tell folks that it is it's a different kind of book, and one that's very compelling, and one that's very worthwhile.
Oh, thanks.
So we are running out of time, but tell us, how can you buy a copy of this, or actually even listen to it on CD?
You can go to bookshop.org is always a good option, and then they help support independent bookstores. Of course, it's on Amazon.
The big A.
The big A, yes, because little A is the publisher. It's pretty easy to find. The Fallen Stones.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Diana.
Thanks, Tom,
for being here. And we will be back in a moment with our next guests, Janice Noga and Oscar Speace.
Oh, that was my son. He was here for his high school reunion. 25 years. Where does all the time go? The boys here for a visit. What a blessing. I see the American soldiers dating the German girls. Don't you know that they're the enemy? Have you no shame? They tried to kill all the Jews. Oh, don't you care? The boys, the scientists, they were doing an experiment, and they needed a drop of blood. For what reason, I don't know. They begged me for my blood. Can you imagine? Well, I'm a seamstress. I pricked my finger with a needle like I've done 1,000,000 times, and they mixed their potion. What? You think I'm a little crazy? A child? The Nazis killed children. Children by the thousands. Over and over, I asked myself, would I have children someday? Would the Nazis come and murder my child? What kind of bastards could do this to children? On the day of our liberation, A lot of chocolate was being tossed from the tanks, and someone called out, "This is what America is like, handing out goodies to everybody. Everything good in the world is America. Everything." We believed it.
Welcome back, everyone. I have written a lot about our next guest's passion project. Janice Noga has been performing in the one-woman play Yanka, portraying her own mother-in-law, for 20 years. And Oscar Speace, her husband, wrote that script. Now she's made a movie of it, with Oscar's help, of course.
Of course.
Welcome, Janice and Oscar. Thank you so much for coming. We just watched a trailer for this film, and this is really a big step in the evolution of Yanka, wouldn't you say?
It is, because when we're gone, this movie will go on, and her story will be told throughout the world.
Now, one of the reasons that I think your story is so sweet and so inspiring is that you guys did something during COVID, right?
Yes.
While the rest of us like binge watched every Netflix episode known to humans,
Right.
You actually made a movie yourself. So Oscar, I understand you were kind of the driving force behind
Yes.
this. What made you decide this is what you wanted to do?
Our New York director, who came here for the Rogue Festival, was living in our little room in the back, studio apartment. So we were standing. We couldn't do anything. We couldn't go anywhere. I would drive somewhere and there would be no cars on the road. And then I asked him. I said, well, we're just hanging out. Why don't we turn Yanka into a movie? And he looked at me and said, oh, that's a really good idea. So we broached the subject to Janice, and her first thought was, oh, I have to go and memorize it over again. Anyway, but James and I got some programs on the internet, and then we broke down a script and did a shooting script. And so we shot about 24 scenes over the summer of 2020. And then spent the fall, a couple months, 3 months editing it. And then it was entered in the Reading Film Festival in Pennsylvania. And it was chosen, and it was shown in the stadium, the minor league baseball stadium on the Jumbotron, to a group of people during COVID. And the people there was a couple hundred people there, and they were sitting in chairs all spread out and to watch this. And we were on Zoom, and the comments were unbelievable.
That is just a moment in history, right?
Yes.
People years from now will look back and point to something like that as like, that's what they had to do during that time. So you shot this all in your house,
Yes.
in your house in Fresno. And how did you get the crew? Who?
Oh, Oscar, of course, for 40 years worked at PBS, and so his friends were not working at PBS at that time. They had experience on documentaries and movies, and so Oscar said, would you like to help? And they said yes.
And they had the cameras.
And they had the cameras and the sound and the boom, whatever, mic, yes. And so we used every single room in our home other than the bathroom,
Okay.
and then the garden. And then James, our director from New York, he told me to bring all my clothes and just lay it out, and he would choose an outfit for every single scene. And so it is a movie. It isn't the play. The play, she wore one outfit and she was in her living room. But this, and then also, I was looking at the camera, and then I said, okay, who am I looking at, to James? And James said, you have to come up with a backstory. So I said, okay, a backstory makes the actor know who they're talking to. So I just chose Yanka's brother, who loved her so much. And he had a friend in the temple, Jewish temple, and had a son in journalism. And so, and he asked Yanka if he could come and interview her. She had never spoke to another person about this. And so that was in my mind when I was speaking to the camera.
And just for folks who might not know the story well of Janka, Janka actually didn't tell about her experiences in the concentration camp to anybody, right? You actually found this in a letter that was discovered after she passed. Is that?
Yes. So she was liberated in this May 1945, and then later that at the end of this, anyway, she wrote a letter to an uncle in America who wanted to know what happened through the Red Cross. They had got contact that she had one surviving relative from her father's generation who lived in America. So she wrote a letter to him, a very long 60-page letter, telling what happened in the year before, because they were part of the Hungarian solution. Northern Romania, Transylvania had become part of Hungary, and they were all Hitler in the last year tried to take all the Hungarian Jews. So she wrote this letter, and we found it after she died. And because of she never really talked about it, so we didn't know. I thought, Holocaust. Well, how did you survive 4 or 5 years of the Holocaust? Well, we learned she was only there for a year. And then who died? Who were you with? What happened to Aunt Gizzy? How did she die? All these things we didn't know about. But because of the letter, I was able to write a very accurate story, and I told her from the point of view of the son wanting to know the story. Mm-hmm. And finally, she decides to tell whoever's in somebody in the living room, the audience, that she would tell them the story and ask their advice, should I tell my son?
So, Janice, when you perform the play version, the live version of this, you have an entire script that you have to memorize.
Yes.
That you had to memorize when you did it in New York.
Yes.
Was it easier to do the movie?
Yes.
It was. Okay.
I will go for the movies every time, because they would only say, okay, here are the 3 scenes that you will be doing, and we'll give you 3 days to prepare. And then James would meet with me the morning of the shoot, and he would say, okay, I want it deeper. I want it deeper. I said, deeper? He said, yes. And I don't want it to be like the play. I want it to be into her deepest recesses of her heart and her memory of the 63 people that she lost in that 1 year. So that's what I did.
It really is an amazing story, and it's wonderful that you found this new avenue, to kind of let people know about it. So you're going to have a big premiere.
Yes.
Tell us about that. When is that?
It will be April 1st and 2nd at the Fresno Art Museum. And we will have a red carpet. Oscar will be in a tuxedo, and I will be in a gown, of course. It premieres. And then we'll have hors d'oeuvres and wine afterward. And if people wish to ask questions about it, it would be that time. And we're very excited.
And how can people get tickets, Oscar?
The Fresno Art Museum's website, fresnoartmuseum.org. They can, go online and look for the calendar or whatever. And then the phone number is...
the phone number is 441-4221.
Right.
And so that's a way
you call for tickets, make a reservation.
You can call for tickets.
Yeah, it's in the Bonner Auditorium. It should be just a perfect venue for this.
Well, great.
Yes.
Well, I'm so glad you were able to come on the show and tell us about this. I've talked a lot about Janka even on the show, and so it's really fun to be able to tell people about this new version of it.
And thank you.
You're welcome.
Without Donald's help, he's been on our journey for 20 years, because I would call the Fresno Bee and bug him to death to do an article, and because of that, he would bring in the audiences, and we would perform at Second Space, and we raised a lot of money to go all around the world to perform.
Journalists Romanian journalists help us go to Romania, and Fresno journalists helped us go to New York.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you're very
Absolutely.
welcome, and what a
Thank
worthwhile
you.
project.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you again. Before we get to our final guests, let's take a quick look at the list. Here are some recommendations for the month ahead. These include the Rogue Festival, which is back in person, and it is good to be in the Tower District. The festival continues through March 12th. Check the Munro Review for reviews and updates. The Fresno Philharmonic also returns in person on March 12th with a concert at the Soroyan Theater featuring Elgar's Enigma Variations. The Visalia Players production of Legally Blonde, the musical, opens March 11th and continues for 5 weekends. And Broadway fans, this is the one you've been waiting for. Hamilton opens March 30th. Now let's move on to our final guests. Jonathan Padilla and Cady Mejias were ready to go on in the SpongeBob musical in January until they got the call that the production had to be postponed. They're here to talk about what COVID has been like for local theater performers. Welcome, Jonathan and Cady. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So maybe you could help kind of set that scene of that tech week, that week before opening. This was the last week in January, I believe?
It was the last week in January, yeah.
And there was a point that you thought you were still going to be able to open that Friday night, right? Yeah. I know that people had already had to call out sick, or at least a couple, because of positive COVID tests. And I understand that even like a stage manager was ready to fill in on a roll. What was it like that night you found out that somebody else had tested positive and you just wouldn't be able to go on?
It was
devastating.
It was devastating.
Honest.
Like, I literally was about to cry. Like, if not, no, actually I did cry. I did cry. It was very heartbreaking because we put so much effort into it. We cried, a lot of sweat. Like, it was nonstop effort that we put into it. And then to be told that the show was going to be postponed, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah. We were sitting there like full costumes, ready to go on stage and to start teching, and it was just, they came up and we talked to us and they were like, well, here's the thing, we're not going to open this week.
And you also had to work extra hard just in terms of accommodating these like cast changes and trying to get, cover, understudies and all that stuff. So the good news, and we don't want to start this out on a downer, but the good news is you are coming back.
We are coming back.
This summer. Is there a date set for that, or are we just still kind of saying tentative
right now,
summer
it's at tentative summer.
Tentative summer.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know that it can be hard to reconstitute a show, a couple months later, but does it appear that it looks like most of the original cast will be back, and that
it does look it, from what we know, it does look like most of us are going to come back. There may be some people that will say that they have other things to take care of, like there may be conflicts, but we are in high hopes that most of our cast members will be back with us this summer.
Just kind of continuing on the COVID theme for a little more, and then we'll shift. Do you think that theater overall has been able to rise to the occasion and make it work, even though it's been a little tough?
Of course. I mean, even some art center, they started doing digital things. Like this past Halloween, they did Captain Louis, and that was fantastic. I watched it. It was really good. And a lot of companies and production teams just started stepping up to the plate and just started saying, hey, how are we going to do the thing we love, even though the world is stacked against us right now? It's really a testament to how people persevere, which is amazing.
And I think it's really reminded people how important it is for that live connection when you're actually in person. And believe me, I did this show enough times on Zoom to know it's a much different dynamic, right?
Yeah.
And of course, school and everything else. So I'm really proud of what theater can can do and how it can kind of change people's lives
Absolutely.
in that way.
It just has that effect on people, and it makes you really happy. And that's why Jonathan and I are part of the arts, because it makes us happy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, talk about a happy show. I mean, you can't get much happier than
Right.
SpongeBob, right? And I haven't seen it in person, which was one reason I was so looking forward to seeing your production. But I have watched the really nice video production that's on Nickelodeon. Tell us just a little bit about what you do in the show. We'll save you for last. But what's this deal with a squirrel underwater? Did they ever explain that? Or?
A squirrel underwater. Well, being that Sandy is a scientist, she is there at Bikini Bottom for research. And, well, she also lives there because SpongeBob is one of her best friends, so she can't help but stay there just a little longer. But with everything that's happening at Bikini Bottom at that moment, people start being prejudiced against her. They start seeing her as, ooh, she's a land mammal. Her science won't be able to help us. And so that is her arc in the story. She wants to find her place in Bikini Bottom, or she has to leave. And right now she finds that SpongeBob and Patrick, and, well, maybe Squidward too, they are her only friends, and they are willing to stay by her side no matter what.
And Jonathan, I mean, you landed the role. You are SpongeBob. I've seen, I mean, just the press, the publicity photos just make me smile. And I've actually watched your smile for years, you know, on the Good Company stage. But I just love that shot of you like jumping up. What was it like to kind of know that you're kind of carrying this show?
Very scary. Getting the call is just like, I got the stage manager from Kirby, our stage manager, and she was just like, you're playing SpongeBob, and I was like, huh? Like, are you sure? Like, and it was kind of surreal to take on this iconic character that everyone knows and loves, and just bringing it to the stage, and bringing my own rendition of the character, and having show what I love and what is amazing about it. Yeah.
Now, one of the things that really drew me to the show is the fact that it's not like a Beauty and the Beast where you've got your actors all covered up in these elaborate costumes. And they could have done that. You know, they could have made you just look like a squirrel and you just like a sponge. But really, you just look like regular folks pretty much, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's really the goal. I mean, the people at Bikini Bottom are just regular folks going around about their day and just doing their day-to-day things. And that's why the show is so appealing to everyone, because everyone can see themselves in a character.
Were you SpongeBob fans before you got into the musical?
Yeah, of course.
My brother was a big fan of SpongeBob, and then he brought me into it, and it just like, it really is a fun show to binge, especially to binge watch. And my mother absolutely hates the cartoon with a passion. SpongeBob's laugh definitely makes her cringe, and sometimes I do it on purpose just to be fun. But it's a lot of fun to watch. Like if you're like in a bad mood and you want something to laugh at, you know, SpongeBob is a good source to go to in general. So
I know plenty of adults who are secret SpongeBob watchers, and so you were a fan as well.
Of course, yeah. Actually, I think when I was younger, I wasn't allowed to watch SpongeBob. Yeah, until I was like 12 or 13, and I just turned on Nickelodeon one day, and it was on. I just started watching it.
And do you think, at least in rehearsing for the show, did you take on any SpongeBob characteristics that have been hard to shake off?
Yeah, definitely. His optimism is like infectious sometimes. It's so hard to shake it off, because sometimes I'm just like, I could just be happy in this moment and just let it happen. I'm like, yeah, it helps a lot sometimes with some experiences, especially now with COVID and.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I also think it would be almost just exhausting to be happy all the time. Well, usually we end a segment with saying, you know, when is the show going to be? But we don't know quite when it's going to be, but we know it's going to be, right? And that's a really good statement to make to everybody.
Yeah.
So go Selma Arts Center. I'm so happy that we're gonna get to see you later this summer, and I look forward to maybe bringing you on the show again, doing a number, something like that,
Of course.
to get people ready for it.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you for having
you.
us.
Well, that wraps it up for this month's episode of the Munro Review. Be sure to keep up online at munroreview.com for previews, giveaways, profiles, reviews, and more. A big thank you to our volunteer crew, and a thank you to all of our guests, Diana Marcum, Janice Noga, Oscar Speace, Jonathan Padilla, and Cady Mejias. And for all of you, please keep exploring and supporting the local art scene. We'll see you next time.